I don't know about you, but I get so overwhelmed with the amount of brand new book releases being released every month. And there is physically not enough time in the world to read all these amazing sounding books. So it got me thinking, and it's inspired my latest series, Buy or Buy. So in each episode, I will go through a handful of newish thriller book releases and let you know if I think you should buy them or say goodbye to them. Emma Rees Crime here, your fellow crime, thriller and mystery book lover. Welcome to my YouTube channel. If you've seen some of my previous YouTube videos, then you'll know what I'm going to say about My Husband's Wife by Alice Feeney, which came out a couple of weeks ago. One day, Eden Fox is out going for a run when she comes home and her key does not work in her front door. A woman answers her front door who bears a very similar resemblance to Eden Fox and claims that she is Eden Fox. And then to make matters more confusing, her husband confirms that this stranger is indeed his wife, Eden Fox. I mean, what a way to start off a book. I was hooked immediately. I was so addicted and so hooked, and I do feel that I go on about this book a lot, but that's because I loved it so much, and in my opinion, it is 1000% a buy. Next is A Murder in 8 Cocktails by Kelly Mullen, so this is going to be released in March. It follows a 55-year-old influencer, and she's a content creator in the ASMR industry. And I don't know about you, but I love ASMR. Her ASMR involves cocktail making, and because she's got a sizable following, she is invited to an opening of a bar. However, at this bar, the owner mysteriously dies and everyone thinks it's suicide. However, she is not convinced, so she sets out to investigate herself. While you're reading through the book, every now and again you come across a recipe to make a cocktail, and the idea is that you make the cocktail and then read while drinking the cocktail that it suggests that you make. Personally, I haven't done this while reading the book, but I did think it was a really nice idea and something a bit unique and different. I really love the main character. I found it a really easy read, really easy to fly through. However, even though I did find it enjoyable, it didn't blow me away. So whether I think you should buy or say goodbye, I'm going to say maybe on that, which isn't very helpful. Next is Freida McFadden's latest release, Dear Debbie. I am so excited that she's announced that she's got another book coming out in May. I think it's called The Divorce, but I'm so excited. We follow advice columnist Debbie Mullen, and in this book, her neighbours are driving her insane, her 2 daughters are kind of being weird, her husband is behaving really suspiciously, and then to top it all off, she has lost her job, so she is now out for revenge for those who deserve it. Freida McFadden obviously loves to write an unreliable character in her books, and Debbie Mullen is really unlikable, yet you strangely really root for her and you want her to succeed. As with all of Freida McFadden's books, I ate it up. I flew through it. It was so fast-paced. I think that this is the best book that she's brought out in a very long time, and I'm actually undecided if it's my new favourite of all her books. So in my opinion, it's a definite buy. And if you're local to the UK, have you seen the spreads on the Works edition? Gorgeous. Next we have It's Not What You Think by Claire Mackintosh. This was me giving this author a second chance because I didn't love The Last Party by her. In this story we follow main character Nadika, and she is rushing home because she's going to try and catch her boyfriend out because she is convinced that he is having an affair. She's been stung in the past because her ex-husband cheated on her. However, when she arrives home, her home is covered in police caution tape, and she finds that her boyfriend Jamie has been murdered. The story covers racism, and it wasn't something I was expecting from this author, but obviously it's a very important subject matter. It was a fast-paced book, there was some shocking twists, some I did guess, but some left me baffled, and overall I really enjoyed it, and I definitely think it's a buy. If you watched the latest UK Traitors, you will have seen that thriller author Harriet Tice was on the latest series, and she has a brand new book being released in February called Witch Trial. It follows a trial where 2 schoolgirls have been accused of murdering a fellow classmate. However, rumours circulate that this is more than just a classic jealousy thing and that witchcraft and witch trials have been involved. We follow the perspective of Matthew, a juror, and the blurb doesn't give too much away, so what I really liked about the story is as you read on, you were learning about the trial like you were learning about the trial if you were a juror, if that makes sense. It started off so strong, but unfortunately it went downhill. It gets weird. The more you read on, the weirder it gets, and don't get me wrong, I'm here for a weird book, but it didn't work. It just didn't work in my opinion for this book. It wasn't a bad book per se, but it really wasn't my cup of tea, so for me it was definitely a buy. After absolutely loving Ask for Andrea by Noelle W. Illy, a few of you recommended that I read the prequel Forget You Saw Her, which has been released fairly recently. And in this story, we actually follow Andrea and her disappearance, and her biological mother hears about her disappearance, so comes to try and investigate and find out what has happened to her biological daughter. The writing style was written the same as As for Andrea, which I loved. Normally I find Supernatural that hit and miss, but for this book it was a definite hit. I didn't love it as much as As for Andrea, but it was very, very close, and I think that if you enjoyed As for Andrea, then Forget You Saw Her is a definite buy. New release I was so excited for was Nowhere Burning by Katrina Ward. Nowhere Valley has become a sanctuary for runaway children. Previously, it was home to Leaf Winham, who was a movie star, but he used this place to hide his crimes. And in the story, we follow a couple of children who have run away from their abusive situation. I loved the premise of this, but unfortunately for me, I just could not get on board with the writing style at all. I found it extremely slow. The writing was hard to follow, and there were so many POVs, it was confusing, and you really had to concentrate, otherwise you would just have no idea what's going on. For me personally, I thought that this was a buy. However, I will give this author a second chance in the future. I've heard that Sundial is brilliant. I only have 3 more books left to go. If you have made it this far into the video, then thank you ever so much. If you're not already doing so and would like to hit that subscribe button, it would mean so much. If you're liking what you're seeing and would like to see different styles of content from me, then you can also find me on Instagram and on TikTok. Now on for my final books. Quite a lot of these books have been quite dark and disturbing, so my next book is a cozy mystery. It's very wholesome, and that is The Pye and Mash Detective Agency by J.D. Brinkworth. It follows Jane Pye and Simon Mash. They're a couple and they start to do a detective course together. They are assigned some coursework which is to investigate the disappearance of Nellie Thorne. However, this is like the 5th Nellie Thorne to have disappeared in I think 50 years, maybe 15 years, so it's a very perplexing and complex case. This was honestly so wholesome, and I love the characters, and it was a great palate cleanser because it was an easy read, but it still had the element of mystery, and it kept making you want to read on and read on. It's the start of a new series, and in my opinion, it is a definite buy. One of my most anticipated reads was Caller Unknown by Gillian McAllister. Main character, I can't remember her name, but she flies to America because her and her daughter are going to do an American road trip. However, after their first night, she goes to her daughter's room and her daughter is missing, and all that there is a phone. The phone starts to call, and she is told that if she wants her daughter to stay alive, then she needs to comply and also obviously not get the police involved. I would describe this as an action thriller. However, I found it really slow paced, and I did find it a bit of a slog to get through. It definitely wasn't my favourite of hers. I think that she's got better books out there. So personally, I think it's a buy. However, if you're a big fan of the author, then maybe it is worth a read. Then my final book is Ice Angels by Caroline Mitchell. Something Caroline Mitchell is brilliant at doing is detective series, and this is the first book in her brand new detective series. 10 years ago, Detective Elena's daughter was kidnapped, and it was part of a case called the Ice Angels case. Then in the present day, young girls start getting kidnapped again, but in England. I think it's in Surrey. I can't quite remember. I think it's in the UK. Anyway, and the case bears a similar resemblance to the Ice Angels case, so Elena is brought over to assist. Obviously, she's there to work, but she has an ulterior motive, which is, of course, to find out what has happened to her daughter. The case as a whole was written really well, but why this was a standout for me was Elena was a brilliant main character. She was morally grey, she liked to colour outside the lines, she was so interesting. She was super badass as well, she was just goals. I thought she was incredible. Quite often I find that the first books in series are quite slow because they contain too much backstory. However, the backstory was relevant to the case, so it was really interesting and it was really addictive and it wasn't slow. I thought it was really well written, there were some great twists, and I cannot wait to see what happens in book 2, especially after how book 1 ended. Obviously my lips are sealed, I will say no more, but it was a definite buy. Speaking of thriller book series, I've done a video where I talk about my favourite thriller book series of all time, and if you've not had a chance to check that out, I will link it here. And if you want to know more about Dear Debbie by Freida McFadden, I've done a whole spoiler-free review which can be found here. Thank you ever so much for taking your time to watch this video. As always, let me know what you think in the comments and follow me on Instagram.